HiTechShoe, and I have another Battleborn character review episode for you. And in this episode, we're going to be looking at Alani. We're going to be looking at the Eldrid Water Wielder, I guess you could say. We're going to be looking at her skill setup, her lore and backstory, her Helix loadout, and some tips and tricks that I have found to beast it up with her on the battlefield, even though she has been nerfed quite a lot, and we'll get into that later. So first up, her first skill is called Riptide. Alani will throw a wall of water forward at her opponents, and it'll knock them back slightly, and it will also speed up all allied movement, including herself, for roughly 3 seconds. Any augmentations that you make to Riptide will also last for roughly 3 seconds as well. Her second skill is called Geyser. Alani will create this little circle on the ground, and enemies that are in that circle will be launched up into the air, and they will be trapped in a bubble, and they will be stuck there for 1 second, making them an easy target for Alani to damage. Her ultimate ability is called Emergence. Alani will mark either a location on the map or an individual, a person, enemy, or ally, and after a small buildup of time, a water dragon will appear forth from the ground beneath the either opponent or ally or marked location. It will attack that area, and it will also leave a swelling, like in a whirlpool kind of effect on the ground, and it will continually deal damage to all enemies in that region for 4 seconds after the dragon's initial attack. Pretty good skills so far. Now, her basic R2 ability is called Torrent. Alani will hurl her little water bolts forward, and every hit on an enemy target will build up osmosis stacks. As you notice, the osmosis stacks are these little circular, pellets in the middle of Alani's screen that you use to aim with. Every hit slowly builds up until Alani can have a maximum of 3. Her osmosis is what's used for her healing. Successful hits with her torrent hone Alani's connection to the water, generating up to 3 osmosis stacks, and increase the healing power of her wellspring. L2 is what her wellspring is. Alani will either heal an ally for a great amount of health, depending upon how much osmosis she has built up, or Alani will heal herself for half the amount if there is no ally, being currently targeted. So sometimes you'll see Alani target an ally, and then she'll do a little gesture with her hand, and that's her healing an ally. So as you see right there, I was targeting Kelvin. I could have healed Kelvin with my osmosis had I wanted to, but I was trying to kill Miko right here. So that's her basic skill setup. It's a pretty good setup for offensive and healing abilities. I gotta say, I like Alani a lot. But now that we're done with her skill setup, let's go into her lore and backstory. So the first thing you should know about Alani is that she is from the water world of Akpos. It's a world completely enshrouded underwater. And while she is actually on the ship with Galt and Cleese and all that, she would actually spend time in their water tank because she came from a water world. Surprise, surprise. It makes her feel more at ease, and it's probably more comfortable to be, completely surrounded and encased in water. It's just how she is. But one thing is that Cleese actually discovered that Alani is in possession of some nanotech. The nanotech which allows her to manipulate the water and use it not only as a weapon but also as a healing instrument. And you'll hear Alani actually use this. If Alani were in, like a player versus player game mode and she gets hit with like slow abilities, you sometimes might hear her say, "Oh no, my nanotech," or my communion with nature. She is well aware, her and her race are aware of the nanotech that inhabited their body. Supposedly, some civilization a long time ago infested their world with some type of nanotech, and somehow along the way, they managed to incorporate it into their own beings, and now they use it, and it helps them wield water even more effectively. So they were natural inhabitants. They were affected and exposed to this nanotech. They managed to adapt to it and use it and evolve with it, and now they've learned to become even more proficient with it. So Alani is actually very useful at wielding water as a weapon and as a healing device because of this nanotech. And the tattoos on her body that glow when her osmosis is full, that's the result of her nanotech. The tattoos on her body glowing white when she has a full osmosis stack. Now, she is very, very good friends with Galilea. How they exactly became good friends, I'm not sure. But it shows that Alani wishes to spend more time with Galilea, that they're good friends, that they respect one another. But like I said, I don't know how exactly they became friends. They're definitely not of the same race. So I'm not sure where they met or what history they have together. However, she does have a very interesting history with Umbra. And that's the Alani lore challenge that everyone seemed to have trouble with. Was the kill Umbra 25 times in Crucible in regular versus game modes. That was definitely a lore challenge that pissed a lot of people off. I got lucky and I managed to actually accomplish it. But you know what? That little lore piece tells an interesting story of how Umbra and a bunch of her sisters was called to Alani's homeworld to eradicate that homeworld and eradicate all of her race because they wanted that planet to use it for a fleet, to use it for a naval force, I guess. It seemed like an easy pick, an entire water world. Why wouldn't you use it? Why wouldn't you take control of it and use it for a fleet? So they met a lot of resistance, and Umbra and her sisters were sent there to remove that resistance, to kill off Alani's entire race. However, Alani's entire race, excluding her, was wiped out by Umbra's forces. But Alani managed to sneak aboard Umbra's ship as it happened, and pretty much saw the destruction of her race, and that sent Alani into a furious rage. And slowly, one by one, Alani killed off every single one of Umbra's sisters until Umbra was the only one left standing. And Umbra was completely shocked by this show of force that she had not seen in quite some time, according to her, and which was a reference to Galilea. The destructive force that Alani demonstrated reminded Umbra of Galilea's capabilities and Galilea's destructive abilities. So, out of respect, and also out of, probably out of, the necessity to survive, when Alani reached Umbra and it was just them one-on-one, Umbra felt like, even though she could win, out of respect for what Alani was capable of, she decided to offer her a ship for escape in exchange for Umbra's life. But not only that, if you notice that Alani's regular default skin, her default costume, has a red sash around it, has this red little piece, that is part of Umbra's robes. Umbra gave her a piece of her own robes as a show of respect and admiration for her combat skills. So that's a huge compliment coming from someone like Umbra. When she acknowledges your destructive capabilities, as a sister of the Sustaining Mother, as the Order of the Sustaining Mother from the Generate Empire, when Umbra praises your combat skills, it's a very worthwhile, accolade to have under your belt. So even though Alani and Umbra aren't friends, Alani has gained Umbra's respect as a combat person. And that's it for Alani's lore and backstory. Now we're going to go into her Helix loadout, and we're going to show you some augments that I have found to tear it up with Alani in all these game modes. Okay, so right off the bat, level 1, this one is entirely up to you. I like to go with Soothing Mist just because I use Riptide a lot. It is capable of affecting multiple allies at the same time. Not only that, but it's also part of a lore challenge. So you're going to be using Riptide a lot on your allies just to try and complete that one lore challenge. Splash Zone is good for instant health for like you and your allies and stuff like that. So if you and your characters, you and your allies need instant health, Splash Zone is definitely possible. But I like Soothing Mist just because I use Riptide a lot, and I like to save Geyser for enemies. Now for level 2, I go with Surface Tension. A target that is hit by Geyser will take additional damage, and all damage to that target deals damage to nearby enemies. Meaning, they take more damage, and that damage is shared by enemies that are right next to them. That is outstanding. You'll see me use Geyser on enemy Battleborn constantly. I'm always looking for an opportunity to trap them in that bubble and deal extra damage, deal insane damage. One special move I'd like to do is I like to hit them with Geyser. I'll hit them with hit them with Torrent and build up her osmosis a little bit, and then right before they're about to get out, I'll use her ultimate on them and summon that water dragon, so that right when they get out of the bubble and they land, they're already bound by Alani's ultimate, and they get hit by the dragon and they take a good amount of damage. So that's definitely one combo that you can use, is to use Geyser followed up with Alani's ultimate. Now for level 3, I like to go with Whitewater, increasing her Alani's attack speed. You know, her basic torrent attacks, you know, her combo is sped up a little bit, meaning she can hit enemies with more rapid succession, allowing her to build up her osmosis even faster, allowing you to heal Alani or allies quicker. I just see it as, you know what, it's just too many good things. Now, Kinetic Diffusion is a great ability. If you think that you can get by with Alani's basic attack speed as is and you don't need to speed it up, you can definitely go with Kinetic Diffusion. Allowing Alani to move faster and increase in movement speed, Alani greatly benefits from that. I mean, she greatly benefits from that. Go with the Flow is also pretty good, but you have to land a bunch of hits, and I mean a bunch of hits. And with Alani, I've never been that great with Alani's basic melee, with Alani's torrent. So I usually go with Whitewater, but any one of these is solid. Now, next up, level 4, I like to go with Wet Blanket, Riptide slowing all my enemies. This makes it so that I can hit them with Geyser a little bit easier, trapping them in the bubble and then just dealing massive damage. Wave Shock and Ride the Wave are not terrible, but I definitely prefer Wet Blanket just because if my opponents can't move, it's easier to hit them with Torrent, it's easier to trap them with Bubble, it's just easier to hit them and deal damage. Next up, level 5, I like to go with Full Saturation. Healing with Osmosis stacks reduces the amount of damage the target takes. So they can take a great amount of damage, they can take a great amount of damage, I heal them, and then they get damage reduction. That's excellent, that's great, I can use that on myself or I can use that on allies. It's great support. I can't imagine why I wouldn't enjoy Full Saturation at all. So the other two, I personally didn't find all that much of a use for. I'm not saying they're terrible or anything, I just prefer Full Saturation because it's great support for me and my allies. Next up, I like to go with Refresher. As stated before, I like to use Riptide a lot on allies, so doing so allows me to build up Osmosis even quicker, and as stated before, once again, I like to save Geyser for enemies. So if I use Channeling, there's no guarantee that it'll work, because if I miss an enemy, it won't generate that Osmosis stack because it only generates Osmosis per enemy knocked into the air. So if I miss with Geyser, I miss the opportunity to build up Osmosis for free, whereas Riptide is easy to fulfill. Refresher is easy to fulfill off Riptide because it increases my movement speed anyway. Next up, we've got Overflow and Pressure Wash. I like to use Pressure Wash just because that allows Alani's torrent attacks to move faster and her Osmosis builds up faster. So it just allows us to just, hey, we can hit our opponents harder and faster, especially if I chose the level 3 augment for increased attack speed with her torrent. So Pressure Wash is an excellent way to complement that if you so choose. You can also go with Overflow if you want, either one is good. Next up for level 8, I go with Pressure Valve. Pressure Valve is excellent because I started to go with Pressure Valve, but I actually eventually went with Aquifer, just because I like the ability to reduce the eruption time, because some people will notice that you generate that circle and then they'll move away. The reduced eruption time allows it to trigger that much quicker, and they might not be able to get out of the way, meaning you trap them more often. Excellent ability. Old Trustworthy is also not too bad, but since you're not going to be using it on too many enemies at once in terms of enemy Battleborn, you're only going to be focusing on one enemy at a time when they're airborne. Increasing the area of effect is good against ads, but not so much against enemy Battleborn unless you have trouble putting it on the ground where you want it to. Next up, level 9, I like to go with Waterproof. Since I choose to use the slowing ability, I want it to travel further and affect more enemies. Increasing the duration of Riptide's Trail of Water doesn't increase the severity of the slow, it just means that it lasts longer, but odds are, since the Riptide is kind of narrow and long, I prefer to just make it so that instead of it lasting longer, people just move a little bit to the side and then the effect will wear off pretty significantly, or they'll run away and it'll eventually wear off because they outrun it, and they manage it. The distance isn't all that great with Riptide in the first place, in my opinion. Waterproof definitely helps because it allows me to control long, narrow tunnels, and it slows everything in the way. So if an enemy tries to retreat, they're just going to have to go through more areas of slow for that 3-second period that Riptide lasts. So I prefer waterproof for level 9. Finally, level 10, I've liked any one of these is good. Undertow I used first up, right? I liked Undertow right off the bat until I got Transpiration. So I used Undertow right off the bat, then I went with Transpiration, just because I like to deal more damage, and resetting all cooldowns is pretty dang good. So you can definitely use the combo of use Riptide to slow your opponent down, then use Geyser, launch them up in the air, and then you hit them with Transpiration, which will automatically set Riptide and Geyser immediately, so that if they're still alive, or if you need to beat a hasty retreat, you can use Riptide to run away, or Geyser to lock an opponent down who's trying to escape yet again. Very useful. And that's all I've got for Alani's Helix loadout. Very good, excellent, balanced loadout. I like her balance of offense and defense. Now we're going to head back to the gameplay, and I'm going to talk about some tips and tricks that I found to use her. So one of the first things I have to be honest about is that the earlier gameplay you saw with me playing on Meltdown, that was Alani before her June 16th nerf, where the only nerf she had received was a nerf to her starting health. She lost like almost 400 points of health. However, I went 19-0 in that game. However, after that, on June 16th, she got hit hard. She had a reduction of her Torrent primary attack damage, her Riptide damage, her level 4 mutation wave shock damage, her Torrent projectiles traveled 20% less further than what they normally did. Like, they hit Alani hard on the June 16th hotfix. They hit her hard. And since then, she has definitely noticed... me and a lot of people have said she's definitely weaker. You know, they definitely got the effect they wanted in terms of making her easier to kill. She's not nearly as strong as she used to be. And I can understand that. She's supposed to be a supporter. She's supposed to be a healer. She's not meant to be extremely capable on offense. But that's one thing you're going to have to just deal with that I found. Alani is good at hitting opponents with Geyser. You use Geyser to trap them in bubbles, and then you just pretty much deal damage. Circle around your opponents, hit them with Riptide every now and then to slow them down or to inflict whatever status ailment you want on them, whether it's increased movement speed, increased healing, so on and so forth. But Riptide is definitely one of the best skills that Alani can do for setting up for a Geyser. You can definitely see that now. As you see right here, look at that. My opponent is slowed down, and I don't need Geyser to finish off very weak opponents. Also, one thing I definitely recommend is to use that Osmosis to keep you and your allies healed. Try and keep healing your allies. Now, one thing about her Wellspring healing, using her Osmosis stacks, is sometimes your allies will accidentally come into your field of view, and Alani can accidentally target them for healing when you just wanted to heal yourself. That can be a little frustrating. I acknowledge that. That's just something you're just going to have to deal with. One thing I like to do is I like to either look away at a wall or sometimes look down at the ground right when I go to heal myself to ensure that I don't accidentally heal an ally when I desperately need to heal myself. That can be a little bit of a pain, but like I said, it's just something you're going to have to deal with. Alani is great for support. She's good in this, not on the front lines, but right behind the front lines. So if Galilea or Phoebe or Wrath is leading the charge, Alani is good right next to them, right next to where Miko would be in the fold. Not leading the charge, but up near the combat. Alani is excellent. You should always be looking to build up Osmosis stacks. You should always be looking to build up Osmosis, damage your opponents, bother them from a distance, chase after them a little bit. I would definitely recommend that for equipment or gear, you give something that increases her movement speed and her sprint speed. She's actually very slow starting off. You're going to notice that immediately. But other than that, Alani is actually pretty fun, even with all the nerfs she's received. I like playing her as a lot, and I even mastered her. I got her all the way up to level 15, unlocked all of her lore challenges. It was a lot of fun to play as Alani and to master what she was capable of. She just requires a little bit of patience, and you need to be precise with her torrent attacks, and use her Osmosis wisely. Heal your allies when necessary. Know when to back up and heal yourself and retreat from combat, and then go right back into it. Alani is great on the front lines, like I said, not leading the charge, but right behind the people who do lead the charge. And that's really all I've got to show you with Alani. She's actually very simple and straightforward once you understand her role as a support, as a frontline supporter and healer. She's excellent at supporting your allies now, and her healing is definitely on point. So I would strongly recommend you guys focus with her healing and just keep up the pressure with, help your allies, help your teammates, know when to retreat, pick your spots well, and you should do well with Alani. She's a lot of fun, and I enjoyed playing with her. And that's all I've got for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, comment down below, and I will see you guys all later. This is RadTech Shoes signing off.